Thank you for having me. Yeah, Candice is, someone who really cares about helping people. I think I've always had that need to help people from a very young age, especially like how I treat my friends. But beyond just the academia, being the activist, I'm just a person who really wants to change the world for the better. If not me, then who, is the sort of like philosophy I have. And I think with the high school upbringing I had, where the motto was, be first that you may be of service. I've always had that need for community upbringing and community upliftment. When I look back at it, in high school, I was a dramatic art student. And so drama really pushes you to reflect on social pieces that speak to the current political spaces we're in. So when I came across feminism in particular, and reading literature for colored girls who've had enough, and coming across a lot of bell hooks literature and then performing those pieces, I then realized that I have a love for writing, but as well as researching, but also bringing attention to specific issues. And at that time, being a high school student, it was feminism. But then when I got into university and I started, encountering more advanced literature, and then really being into spaces of activism and being friends with people who have been on the ground, started their own movements, then I realized that I also have the capabilities and the power to do the same. And surprisingly, when I think about it, when I think about like my 10-year-old self when I started my period and how terrified I was, I don't think my 10-year-old self would have thought or comprehended that I would be the Minister of Menstruation 16 years later. And I had such an awkward relationship when I started my period at the age of 10, that I just, every time my period came, I just hid myself. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I was embarrassed. The way I'd roll my pads, I would like roll the pads, put tissue, then I'd put it in a little plastic, and I just didn't want anyone to know that I was menstruating. And so from the age of 10 till about 21, it was 11 years of having an awkward relationship with my body. And when I came across menstrual activism at 21, then I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And this is something that I think we need to be having more conversations about, especially in the South African landscape, because we often don't speak enough about sex and sexual health and reproductive services. So how are we speaking about menstruation? And I think that then just sparked my interest. And from the research and then from the activism, I fell in love with it. I really did. I mean, it's not, when people ask like, so Minister of Menstruation, is it a real thing? I'm like, well, I mean, exclude the budgets, exclude the portfolio, exclude the blue light brigade, or in my case, it would be a red light brigade. It's not an official thing in terms of like, government has recognized it, but the reason why the title was given was because of the workshops my nonprofit does. So we go around from community to teaching young girls, boys, whoever wants to learn about menstruation in an empowering and fun way. I think when I look back on my experience of sex ed and how awkward it was, we would have like this really old lady come in with a slideshow of like STDs and the consequences that will happen if you have sex early before marriage. And I'm like, this is not an empowering way to teach young people about something that is inevitable. Puberty is inevitable. Menstruation is inevitable. Having sex is, part of human life. So why are we teaching it in such a weird way? And so for me, the Minister of Menstruation really speaks to creating a platform where young people, or anyone really, can learn about a natural biological function that happens to more than the population in this world, including people who menstruate that don't identify as women and girls. Because I needed the Minister of Menstruation when I was 10 years old. I needed someone who needed to empower me and educate me, because I felt like I was going to die. I felt like I had a disease. And there's so many young girls in particular who encounter their period blood for the first time, who feel like this is the end, because there's no education, there's no access to this information. So for me, when I think about all the work that we do in terms of workshops or, just spreading the awareness, I always think about just the 10-year-old me. And I always am motivated and encouraged by that to say, well, the next generation of menstruators are not going to feel as scared as I did. And, you know, it's not just the responsibility on me, it's also the responsibility of men as well. Men, boys have the responsibility in speaking openly about periods, because the reason why period stigma continues to exist is because it's based on misinformation. So men often know or hear that, oh, if I touch a girl while she's menstruating, I'm going to be dirty. But where's the evidence to support that, you know? Sure. So Curate, non-profit company, every time I think of it, I just, you know, I always smile, because we really do life-changing work in going into spaces where sex, puberty, periods are not spoken about, and we spend an hour with whoever and we educate them in a fun and empowering way. I think often when people see our stories or see our footage of our workshops, they think, are these guys just grooving? What's going on? But we actually do educate participants. We actually do spend a time, and we're changing the way comprehensive sexuality education should be taught. You know, we're saying, let's remove the fear, let's remove the specific bias, and let's just empower and edu-lift, which is education and upliftment, young people. I think I asked this question to one of my students, and they said, Youth Day is just an opportunity for them to sleep in. And it kind of broke my heart, because I was like, okay, I get it, because, you know, there's a lot of pressure on young students, you know, so many assignments, so many expectations. But it also, for me, showed me that they don't really understand the necessity of Youth Day, the history behind Youth Day, the amount of blood that was shed to ensure that we had access to the amount of opportunities that we have as youth. But also, it told me that that specific student wasn't aware about the specific problems current youth are facing right now. Recently, I attended a Youth Day parade where there were so many young people speaking on issues of climate change, sustainable jobs, gender-based violence, crime. But I think what was interesting about attending that parade was just the passion that young people carried and the creativity in which they organized themselves. And I was just encouraged by the fact that if young people are enabled to lead, our country would be great. And for me, what youth representation means is actually having young people in the spaces of political power. Make menstrual leave a thing in my lifetime so that we can take off leave when we're on our period at work. I mean, there's all other things that I could speak to, right? But I think in my lifetime, I really would want to see the opportunity for so many menstruators who especially suffer with period pain conditions, be it endometriosis, PCOS, or heavy bleeding. If you can say to your boss, I'm taking 2 days off, I'm taking 3 days off, but I can work from home, or I'm just taking days off and I'm being paid for that, that for me, it would be like an amazing moment, because it will then recognize the fact that when we do menstruate, our symptoms are being taken seriously for. I don't know how many times I've heard men laugh at us when they're like, it's just periods, get over it. Sir, it is debilitating. I can't get out of my bed. Sometimes I can't even think, right? And I'm not using it as an excuse to say I can't do anything. It's just saying, let's live in let's be in spaces where it's conducive enough for me to be able to either work comfortably in the office, or I can work from home. Give me the option, right? So recognize me, recognize the fact that this natural bodily function that I have no control over is something that you can at least be sensitive in saying, okay, we'll give you the opportunity to rest. I could talk about, you know, so many things and saying, you're great, you're amazing, you can do this. But I think beyond just that, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Mental health is one thing that is having a major impact on young people. And I often tend to get very emotional over it, because I've experienced severe burnout. I've had very deep, dark, depressive episodes, because we live in a culture where doing the most is something that is celebrated. But what am I doing when I'm not enough, if I don't have my battery full? In fact, I don't even think I'm doing the most sustainably if I'm really tired. And I just want young people to understand that you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to be pouring from it full, and make sure that whatever you're pouring into is giving back in obviously a very sustainable way, right? just take care of yourself. Hello, hello, I am Candice Chirwa, affectionately known as the Minister of Menstruation, changing the world one period at a time. And happy Youth Month. What Youth Month means to me is really just allowing young people to embrace all the opportunities that they have, but also embrace their individuality, because at the end of the day, we are the future leaders of this country. So we need to ensure that we have the power to change the things. So yeah, happy Youth Month.